First, let me apologize for not being with you in person. I truly regret this. But I do want to especially thank the Vinci Science Center for putting on this Summer of Manufacturing and hosting this summit here today. It's very important that you are so engaged. I also want to thank some of the principal sponsors of this event: Air Products and Chemicals, Lehigh County, B. Braun, Allen, Oregon, ATAS, F.L. Smith, and I suspect there are others. But I just want to say thank you to all of you who have helped put this program together. American manufacturing, let's talk about it for a moment. You know, if I had a nickel for every time that someone walked up to me and said, you know, we don't make anything in America anymore and American manufacturing is dead. If I had a nickel for every time someone said that, I'd be a very wealthy man. But the truth is, American manufacturing is not dead. In fact, quite the opposite. We are the greatest manufacturing power on earth, the United States of America, and we should celebrate that fact. We represent 20% of global manufacturing output, about $2.155 trillion worth of output each year. That's more than 45% of the manufacturing output of China, and they're supposedly eating our lunch. It's true, our manufacturing sector is under a great deal of pressure. But if American manufacturing were a national economy, it would be the 6th largest economy in the world, just behind France and just ahead of the United Kingdom, Italy, and Brazil. It's also true that American manufacturing has seen employment losses over the last 30 or 40 years. You know, since the 1970s, we lost about 7 million jobs in manufacturing. That's the bad news. But the good news is we become a much more productive manufacturing sector. You know, back in the 1970s, the average manufacturing worker was producing about $60,000 worth of output each year. Today, it's about $180,000 worth. It's tripled. And, you know, we've become a stronger manufacturing nation in large part because we've become much more innovative. We've used technology very effectively, and we're more productive. So the sector has changed, and it is strong. But we have to do a great deal to maintain that competitive edge. You know, we're not going to be able to simply sit on our laurels. You know, when you look at China and India, for example, they are producing collectively about 700,000 engineers and other technical people. Contrast that to the United States, and we're producing about 70,000. It's a 10-to-1 ratio. This is not a precise apples-to-apples comparison, but I think you get the point. So, to the extent that Washington can be helpful, we can be helpful in the development of science, technology, engineering, and math programs. And luckily, in the Lehigh Valley, we have a program like the Vinci Science Center that really does a great deal to help foster this interest of our young people in these types of fields. It is in our national interest that we develop those so-called STEM opportunities, science, technology, engineering, and math. It's absolutely essential that we do that. And we're delighted that we have Da Vinci here to help us. And we've adopted policies in Washington to help advance these areas. Also, what can we do to help manufacturing? Certainly, we need more regulatory relief. We need a more fair and equitable tax system that encourages and stimulates investment, growth, and jobs. These are all important things. And also, we have to talk about American manufacturing in a winning sense. We can win in the competition globally. Many of these companies that are right here in our community are competing very successfully globally. And we need to expand markets for American producers. Think about it for a second. You know, when we engage in bilateral trade agreements with countries like Colombia or Panama or South Korea, what often is the case, before agreements are ever enacted, many of these countries have access to the American marketplace with very little tariff or barriers. But American manufacturers, producers, and farmers, they often face very heavy tariffs as they try to sell into those countries. So by enacting some of these bilateral trade agreements, we're actually lowering the barriers for the American producer. And when we do that, we win, and we create jobs right here. So that's something else we can do. And so, but there's so much more on the policy level. And I think that we as policymakers have to really listen very carefully to what our manufacturing sector has to say. It's a tough environment out there. And they have to compete. And when their costs are raised because of regulatory burdens, inequitable tax treatment, onerous trade provisions, then it really does harm our sector. And so we have to nurture this sector. And one other thing I want to say, despite this very difficult economic time we're living in, and despite the deficits and the debt that we're all reading about and learning about and understanding the great challenges to this nation, I still remain very optimistic. And I do so because of the fact that our manufacturing sector in particular is so innovative and so productive. America is the point of the spear. This is a country where people have come for centuries now. They've come here because they wanted opportunities. They come here because they're prepared to take a risk, and even prepared to fail, and then start over again and take another risk. That's what separates this country culturally from just about any other place in the world. The people come here for the right reasons, and they are going to be successful come hell or high water. And so we have this kind of determined population, innovative, industrious, and it's something that we should never lose. And so again, and to the manufacturers who are here, you, more than any other folks in our society, represent the point of the spear. Think about what American manufacturing has achieved over the years. All the innovations, all the improvements to our standard of living and our quality of life. We owe so much to our manufacturing community. And for all those discoveries and inventions and gadgets that have yet to be created, you're going to be the ones who will be creating them, and you're going to further continue to improve our standard of living, our productivity, and advance this great nation. So once again, I want to thank you all for participating. Thank you all for being here. And especially thanks to the Vinci Science Center for this wonderful program, the Summer of Manufacturing, the Lehigh Valley Manufacturing Summit. Please enjoy the program, and I hope you all get a great deal out of it. Thank you very much.
Okay, we still have him on the phone. We're just going to open this up to anyone for questions of the congressman, and we're going to attempt to have him answer through the telephone. Anybody have any?
Congressman, would you like to say hello before we begin?
Hey, thank you, everybody, for being there. I apologize for not being there with you in person. I look forward to receiving your questions, and thanks to the Vinci Science Center for putting on this wonderful manufacturing program.
Okay, anybody have any questions for the congressman? Yes.
You gave a figure of 700,000 engineers from India versus 70,000 from the United States. Is that an annual figure?
Congressman, the question was, you gave a figure of 700,000 engineers from China and India and about 70,000 from the U.S. The question was, is that an annual figure?
I believe that is an annual figure, correct, and I can get you the source of that. I don't have it at my fingertips, but that has been that figure has been publicly vetted many times, and I believe that came out of National Science Foundation. But I will check to be sure just where that came from. But I believe that's an annual figure. Yes.
I have a statement or a comment for just we would really love Pennsylvania to maintain their funding of the MRC, because there's probably no single resource we as manufacturers have that outperforms the MRC to help us stay competitive and win in this world. So maintain the money.
Did you hear that, Congressman?
I heard a little bit about the MRC. I didn't hear the whole question.
Yes, that was from Bill Hindle, the CEO of Hindle Power. He was made the comment that we should make it a priority to continue the funding for MRC, because MRC's influence on the manufacturing community is second to none. And I guess a question to you would be what can we do as a community to make sure that that's going to happen?
Well, first, to be clear, the MRC funding, much of it comes at the state level, and they actually have a vote there, so your state legislators would have the most immediate impact on the MRC budget. That said, we at the federal level have a role to play, too. We, through manufacturing extension, through the National Institutes of Standard Technology, we have also been very engaged in supporting manufacturing. Clearly, those types of outreach programs have been helpful, providing an extra set of hands. But I want to be clear, too, that given the nature of federal spending anyway, where for every dollar spent, over 40 cents of it is borrowed, a lot of programs are going to be taking some hits, even programs we like, that there will be some cuts. Again, that said, we have a lot to do on the policy side to help American manufacturing, and I'd love to get into that too at some point about what we should be doing on issues, especially like trade, tax policy, regulatory reform. But that's where we can have a larger impact at this time.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? I have a quick question, Congressman. You mentioned how Washington can help. I would ask you, as we're talking about building partnerships, building initiatives to go forward, who is it that's really focusing on manufacturing within the U.S. government? Is it the U.S. Department of Manufacturing, do we start thinking about the U.S. Department of Labor, Education, or is there a group that's really thinking about all these things from manufacturing's viewpoint?
Yeah, that's one of the problems in Washington. I think many of our programs are sort of stovepipe. You have Department of Labor, you have Department of Commerce, you have the IRS. I mean, we have all sorts of folks who have an enormous impact in their decision-making on manufacturing, the NLRB, the EPA, and I could just go on, and I often feel like we're very stovepipe. So there really is no, I don't believe there has been an effective integrated manufacturing program that really cuts across all these various departments and agencies. I think that's been a real shortcoming in Washington. In the Congress and the House of Representatives anyway, the one committee that tends to have a lot of the jurisdiction and oversight for manufacturing is the Energy and Commerce Committee. That's where much of it occurs, where they deal with all sorts of issues that affect manufacturing. They don't control the tax side. So even in Congress, we're also rather stovepiped in terms of how we deal with manufacturing.
Okay, well, maybe that's something we'll work on today. Oh, we have another question. Congressman, what was the purpose of all of the manufacturing censuses that were sent out to the manufacturing industry that had to be filled out and sent back?
Oh, to the person who asked the question, was that part of the census? Was that in the census forms that you received?
That was in the overall census forms you received?
No, it was a separate census that came to manufacturers. They wanted to know about export, import, all that.
It was a separate census that came to manufacturers wanting to know about export, import, workforce as well? Are you familiar with that?
Yeah, I'm just not sure who sent that. I'm not sure if that came from the Census Bureau or if that came out of the U.S. Department of, well, Census is out of the Department of Commerce. But, I suspect...
It was from the Labor Department.
It's the Labor Department. Well, look, Washington always is trying to get the best information possible, whether it's through the Census or whether it's through a Department of Labor study like the one that you had received. I think it's important for us. It's important that people participate in those types of surveys because that's how often we get some of our information, and some of the sources that we cite are from those types of studies if they came out of the Labor Department. So I suspect that's why we're just trying to get the most up-to-date available information about the nature of American manufacturing. Who your customers are, where you're selling to, what percentage of your business is export versus import. So it's a way for us to gather information. And by the way, the Census Bureau, I want to say one thing about that since you brought it up. The census data that is available, that every decennial census, every 10 years, what happens is that information is very valuable to businesses. Some of the biggest users of that information are business people. I mean, you go talk to a store like a Target or a Walmart, I'll tell you, they mine that census data before they go into a community to determine everything from the size of a parking space to the size of the store to the location to all sorts of issues that they have to deal with. And it's not just in the retail end, but all sorts of people use that information. And the business community, I think, probably benefits from it as much as anyone.
Okay, well, I want to thank you again, Congressman, for joining us. I'm sorry we couldn't see you in person, but I appreciate you taking the time to join us, if only for a few moments, to give us a great message. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thanks again to all the manufacturers in the room who really make our economy go for raising our standard of living, increasing productivity, and really helping advance this great nation. I know you're under a great deal of pressure. You know, unemployment now is at a stubbornly high level at over 9%. You know, and I think that just the message I want to make is that in America we can have a great future. It does not have to be a future of austerity. It can be a future of prosperity. Bottom line is this, is that we in Washington have to enact policies that are pro-growth, whether it's bilateral trade agreements, domestic energy exploration, meaningful tax reform that lowers rates while at the same time broadening the base, regulatory reform, and these are just this touch of the tip of the iceberg. And finally, on the issue of federal spending, you know, the issue of federal spending, where it's at 25% of our GDP or 25% of the economy, this federal spending at this high level is absolutely having a negative impact on private sector job growth. I wish I could say that federal spending or excessive federal spending and private sector job growth are mutually exclusive items. They are not. It's to be very clear, to be extremely clear, that to the extent that Washington fails to deal with its long-term debt and deficit issues, will have an impact on private sector job creation. So that's people ask, you know, why are we talking about this issue? Well, because it's absolutely going to have an impact on growth. And in order to get out of this economic funk, to get out of this what still feels like a deep recession, in order to get out of it, we are going to have to create jobs, and that's going to help us also deal with our deficits and long-term debt issues. So just wanted to share that with you. And again, thank you all for allowing me to participate in this program. And Troy, thanks especially to you and the Vinci Science Center for putting all this effort into it. It really means a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.